Welcome to the Condor DM show. of course. What a great way to start clearing my throat. But yeah, again, welcome to the Condor DM show. Today is the last Dungeons and Dragons coverage of this week, and it's a 2-week special focus on putting on old school D&D. Tonight, I'm covering old school Essentials and the overall OSR. I want to talk about something. Yeah, I don't want to stay in the negative today, but I was asked. Okay, so I guess somebody with a small YouTube channel recently reacted to some of my content. I guess. And I was asked if I would react to that person because I guess somebody with a slightly bigger channel brought up their reaction to me. I guess. I don't know. And I want to be clear. I would not respond to that person or attack them. I don't initiate attacks. I could have tried to do certain things in the past I haven't done. So I want to make it clear the way I see focusing on other content creators on here. When you bring them up by name and you insult them or attack them, I view it as you trying to grow your following off attacking other people. And I think it's the most pathetic form of content that you could do. I don't care if you do it during your streams or you do it in a video. When you bring up other content creators to attack them, I see that as purely you trying to grow your following off attacking other people. I have made it clear, and I wish people would pay attention to the facts with me. I've had a couple bigger YouTubers in the old school Dungeons and Dragons community that have went after me. One guy brought up a fake receipt, and he has a pretty big channel, around 10K subscribers. I could have brought up his name, and I could have done that trying to get more attention by bringing up his name, right? I could have brought up his name. In my reactions, I didn't. Another guy who has almost 10K did about 20 streams on me, and I could have responded after one stream. I could have responded after 5. I could have responded after 10. I waited till about 20 before I gave a response to that YouTuber, and I never did it with the intent to grow because I didn't want to respond to the first one, number 5, number 10, number 15. It took 20 streams of him mentioning me before I said something. And I've even removed that content since because I really had the principle that I don't want to have to grow a following off attacking other YouTubers. I think it's pathetic. I think you're pathetic. And I don't care if you're going after somebody smaller than you or bigger than you. It's a pathetic way to attempt to grow your follower base, your subscriber base on YouTube. You should be able to grow your subscriber count by your own talent. And if you can't do that, I don't think you're a real YouTuber. I really don't count you. If you have to do rage, bait, or yes man content, read out of a gaming book with barely any opinions outside of what the book is already explaining to you, or you want to do Discord conversations on YouTube, I just think you're not meant. It's a principle. I don't care what you do. You could be on YouTube, you could be a YouTuber, but if you're asking me what I think, if you gotta do your Discord conversations on YouTube because you have no talent to do something else, I don't think you're meant to be here. If you have to attack people to grow your subscriber base, I don't think you're meant to be here. If you have to do yes man content and read from the book and pretty much tell people what the book says in detail, and that's all you really can say most of the time on certain subjects, I don't really think you're meant to be here. I don't think you're a real YouTuber. I don't think you're an entertainer. I don't think you have talent for this, right? I always think that your talent should be what grows your subscriber count. So I was asked today, a much smaller YouTuber, probably with under 100 followers, responded, attacked me, whatever. And that guy was slightly bigger than him, I guess. I've been told this. Responded to him attacking me and talked about. I guess it was mentioned that like, if I attack, it's on. Like it's like that's if you talk about me attacking people, that means you have not paid attention to the facts and the evidence in front of you. I don't initiate attacks. I respond. And there's a lot more than just this little bit. I'm talked about still every single week. I'm attacked all the time. I react to very, very little of those attacks. Very few do I ever respond to. Like ever. I mean, some weeks I see me mention on, like, again, even recently, 4 or 5 streams in a week I'm mentioned on. I don't respond to none of them. I'll be mentioning 3 or 4 or 5 videos. I don't respond to them. And it's like some weeks there's no response. There's no even attempt to respond. And it's a response, not me initiating an attack. But people have been very successful over the years of falsely painting the picture that I attack people and start drama. It's like, imagine a guy with almost 10K subscribers does 20 streams on me. I do a response after 20, not after 1, not after 5, not after 10, not after 15, after 20. And I'll have people in the old school community, in the old school tabletop role-playing game community, talk about me as if I attack people. What a successful twisting of the facts and truth. You're taking reality and twisting it into a fantasy. I don't initiate attacks. I respond to people, and very few, very, very few, right? I've been attacked for 7 years. At one point, there was over a year, there was like 16 straight months of consistent 3 streams a week, 4 to 5 videos every week for 16 straight months. So over a 7-year period, there was an extreme period of time, 16 straight months, where that happened. And I would do a response video once every 3 months. Now, my criticism of the old school tabletop role-playing game community, which are general criticisms, I don't mention individual names, nor do I go after individual people. It might be calling out their like ideas about wargaming and D&D or stuff like that. Between that and the few responses that I do, reality has been twisted quite successful into calling me a drama starter who attacks people. Like people react to me as if I do that. Like, man, I'll talk to you, Stephen, but I'm not really down for the drama. What do you mean? If you looked at the facts and reality, you would not even assume I'm doing drama. Like, it's just, I mean, think about it. And I don't use, one guy did a fake receipt on me, which was an image, or at least reported on something like that. And he has like a 10K channel. I never said his name. Still not going to say his name. Still not going to try to use anything of him to grow my subscriber count. I'll defend myself at times, very few times really. And again, I still have weeks, even recently, where it's like multiple streams I mentioned and attacked and insulted. Multiple videos in the same week of the multiple streams. And there's no response from me at all. And this happens week after week. There was the 16 months. It's been 7 straight years of this consistently. I don't think a single month has went by in 7 years where I'm not mentioned and attacked. And I barely ever respond. Like barely ever. 99.9% of it, I don't respond to. 99.9% of people that talk shit about me, I don't respond to. And I do that to show people I'm not into the drama to begin with. I mean, if it takes you talking shit about me in 20 streams before you finally get me to respond, that got to tell you I'm not looking to respond. Like, I'm not looking after stream 1, stream 5, stream 10, stream 15. Takes 20 streams. So, it's, sometimes I've come out and disagree with people's ideas or opinions, and that will be painted as an attack. But that's just falsely painted as an attack. That's not what I'm doing at all. And that's just a disagreement. It's not even attacking the person at all. There's people here that attack people, and I see attacking people, going after other YouTubers, as a very pathetic way of growing your subscriber count. It just tells me you don't have the talent to be here. That's what it tells me. If you have to attack other people, you don't have real talent to be an entertainer or be a YouTuber. That's it. So if I think that, why would I do that? But people have successfully painted me as some type of attacking drama person over the years. And it's like, look, if you fall for the false picture being painted, well, that says a lot about you, doesn't it? You don't look at the facts. You're someone who's told what to think and what to believe. I mean, okay, zombie. Right? People can just tell you what to think and you think it. I mean, you could be led by the nose. I'm sorry, that it doesn't say much good about you. If you can be told what to think about other people, you don't look into it yourself and you know nothing about them. And when you're talking with an echo chamber, understand you're dealing with an echo chamber. If you're around an echo chamber and an echo chamber is saying somebody is bad, it's an echo chamber, right? The social dynamic changes. It's one thing to go into an overall community without an echo chamber, and many people separate from each other in the community say somebody has an issue. Then that person may have an issue. There may be some real truth to the majority of people thinking something about somebody. But when you go into an echo chamber of people that live in bubbles and can't stand criticism, can't stand being disagreed with, when you go into an echo chamber, likely the individual that people hate is not in the wrong to begin with. It's usually a complete reversal of that social situation. And you got to know when you're dealing with an echo chamber compared to just an overall community of people. It's a different story. So, I mean, I don't know how much evidence I can keep drilling at people. I don't respond for 20 streams. I don't use bigger YouTubers. I don't use their names or try to grow off their back, even when they open the door for me to do so. And the smaller YouTuber, whoever it is, that was attacking me, I mean, I just wish the guy would just try to grow on YouTube on his own talent, like his own work. I would rather not be used as somebody that person is just using to grow a subscriber account. And I know that's what's happening with smaller accounts. They'll use people like me because they think they have permission, because they think they can attack me and no one's going to give them heat for it. And most likely they're right, but they're going to try to attack me to grow on YouTube. It's like, dude, if other people didn't try to use me and you thought you could do that, you wouldn't attack me. So you're just trying to use me to grow on YouTube. It's not really about hate. It's about trying to use me. It's like, dude, if you have talent, I wish you luck. I'm not even mad at you for attacking me. I think that's just other older guys here setting a very piss poor example for other people coming in this hobby or online. I think they're setting a piss poor example. And I'm somebody in the old school. It's like I'm in the community and I'm being used this way. I think it doesn't help us out to be attacking each other this way. This is why I choose not to initiate attacks. That's why I choose not to respond after 1 stream, 5 streams, 10 streams, 15 streams. It takes 20 streams of people attacking me, somebody with a bigger account. Now understand, it could benefit me. I could see it that way as, man, he said one thing about me. Oh, let me respond right away. That will get me attention. And it might if I wanted to do it that way, but I didn't, because I didn't care for it, because I think I can, or I think I should attempt to grow on YouTube through my own talent, not through attacking people in some childish, pathetic way, especially when we're only talking about games. Like, I might disagree with you. I don't hate you. And to attack you is to harm your reputation, or an attempt to harm your reputation. So I could harm you, not just me get a hit, but I'm harming you now. I'm just not that petty, not over games. I mean, would have to be, I'm passionate about this. And I do care, right? And I do care about the ideas. I'll argue strongly on opinions and ideas. No doubt, I will do that part. That part I will be very strong about, but like personally coming after you to ruin you, it's pathetic. It's over games. I mean, I would never try to ruin someone's life or ruin their hard work or ruin anything they're doing on here over games. It is pathetic. It says you're a pathetic piece of trash human being. It's what I honestly think of people that do that. So no, I don't attack people. I don't go after bigger YouTubers when they open the door for me. The exception was the one person I keep mentioning, and I took down the content because I got after myself. The guy did, again, he was a bigger account. He did one stream on me. I could have responded. He did 5 streams, still didn't respond. 10 streams, still didn't respond. 15 streams, still didn't respond. 20 streams was okay. All right, dude, I think that justifies me saying something at the time. But it's how falsely people painted a picture of who I am that I have no control over that part. All I can do is ask people to look at my actions and really think to themselves, am I someone who's out here attacking people, or am I responding to people? And I respond to very little of what is said about me. I mean, isn't the evidence going to tell you more about reality than what you want to be true? Because there's some people out here, they just don't like my opinions about games. So they want to put me in a bad light because it makes it easy to dismiss me and what I'm saying about games that they don't like. So that way, and then even worse is when people put you in a bad light and they keep seeing you like that forever. It goes from deceit that you're really not that person, and they know at first that you're not. But after seeing you like this for so long, deceit and lies, a false picture becomes real to them. And then this is who I am. And then they tell their people, and I keep encountering people like, Steven, I might talk to you, but I don't want to deal with drama. Dude, I don't do the drama. And I know other people you're talking to. Do you give them that warning? Not me. Oh, for old school essentials. Yes, Sam OG. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. That and the OSR. I want to talk about some games in the OSR, but the old school essentials is a great sort of cleanup of old school gaming. And I knew you would appreciate this because it's something you dove into. But yeah, I was responding to some just people expecting me to attack when I don't do that. So it's like, there you go. That small YouTuber, whoever it is, good luck, dude. I wish you luck. I hope you turn things around. I hope you have some talent for this. I hope whatever projects you do, I don't care. I wish you luck. I wish you luck. It's hard to get a hit here, right? It's not easy. It's not always easy. And cheap content doesn't work for everyone. Like there's other things, Sam OG, just shut your fucking mouth on this. I'm gonna put you in your place right now. No, that's not how that works. I'm not doing drama. So either you fucking pay attention when you come here, or I'm gonna put you in your place. I don't care. I'm saying I don't do drama, so pay attention to it. Here's what happened. Somebody came to me today and asked me if I'm responding to someone. And I said no. And I'm just talking about the way people see me on here. So I'm correcting something. So yeah, and I'm not covering the stuff for another hour or so. So I'm on here for a bit, as I always come on here to freely talk to people. So if you want to go do content, you do it your way. Don't tell me how to do my content. We clear? I hope we're clear. And my content's been very successful, but it's a false picture of 7 years. And I like to correct things when there's a strong chance of me correcting things and getting people to see something different. I don't need you to start trying to control my message on here. You do that for yourself. You go do your own content. Yeah. Control your own message. That's how that works. I think I'm doing pretty good. There you go. It's like, do you pay me money? No, you don't. So my boss can tell me, hey, less of this. All right, good. Don't mean that. Look, dude, I just, you weren't listening in and you're jumping in the middle of it. Obviously, you haven't listened from the start. And if you listen from the start, understand, oh, Steve's not doing drama at all. Steven's completely going against it because I've been asked by several people last night and this morning if I'm going to attack somebody. And I'm like, why not do that, dude? And then I'm explaining that like it's like one guy with a big account, he went after me and it took 20 streams. That means I could have responded to him after one stream. I didn't. And I could have tried to use his bigger account name as a way to get attention if I was trying to be cheap on YouTube. I didn't respond after 5 streams of him attacking me. I didn't respond after 10 streams of him attacking me or 15 streams of him attacking me. It took 20 streams of him attacking me before I said, okay, I think I'm justified in responding to him after 20 streams of pure attacks. And I'll get people that will come across here and talk to me and say, Stephen, I'll talk to you or something, but I don't want to deal with drama. But I'm like, dude, I have like recently, I had in 1 week, I think 4 streams, almost, well, 5 if you want to sort of get to a point of just mentioning me and attacking. In the same week, there was 3 videos. So that's 5 streams, 3 videos. I had a period of time, Sam LG, that you don't know about in the last 7 years where there was a 16-month period of just nonstop attacks, right? Evening, folks. Still bit back and forth. Just will join soon. Just sending some love from Norway. Hey, Black Rose. Hey, baby. What's up? Oh, man. What I'm doing, Sam OG, is just telling people, like, it's like they put a fake receipt out on me, which was fake because it was an image of a so-called receipt of me trying to charge somebody for an event for something. Completely a lie. And a guy with 10K subs, Sam OG, went helped spread this lie, made this major accusation against me. I could have mentioned his name when I was saying it was a lie. Like I did respond to the whole thing, saying like just the issue of being accused of it. And I could have said that guy's name to try to get attention and grow on YouTube. And I chose not to. For the 16 months there, where I was attacked every week, it was 3 streams every week and 4 to 5 videos for 16 straight months. I mean, straight months, every single week, nonstop. I responded once, I think every 3 to 4 months. And people paint that as me attacking people. Like it's just a false picture being painted as me initiating some attacks. No, I'll just respond every so often. People have taken me disagreeing with an opinion. Like so Sam LG, another YouTuber, will put out an opinion about gaming. I'll come out and I'll do a video where I don't attack the person at all. And I'm disagreeing with the idea. You know what I'm told? I attack them. You listen to the video. If you're being fair, nope. Stephen didn't attack them. He just disagreed with their opinion. We're in the public square of ideas. That's part of what you do. But here's what happens, Sam LG. Some people don't like my opinions about the games. And what they do is they'll lie and deceive people about who I am. And at first it's a lie, but like I said, some guys will end up pushing the lie for so long they believe the lie. Like it goes from they know that's not true about me to after believing it for so long, now I am that person. And I'm just trying to push back saying, because there's a young guy, I guess, just did a response attack to me. People are coming out going, oh, Stephen's going to respond to you and attack you. And it's like, well, I guess they're telling him this, but I have no history of actually doing this with people. So I'm like, I'm not going to attack this young guy. I don't care. I wish he wouldn't try to grow off my back, which is what he's trying to do, because other people have set an example that it's okay to attack people. And I think it's pathetic if you're on YouTube and you attack people and you can't get a hit on your own talent. I don't think you're an actual YouTuber. I think being a YouTuber means you got to be an entertainer or somebody who has some talent for being on camera. And if you don't have the talent and you have to attack people, or as I said before, to some guys play yes man, like you read out of the AD&D 1E book and you barely have an opinion, you just tell people what the book says, or you give the message the book is delivering. If that's all you can do on here, I really don't think you're someone who is capable of being on here. Right. And I always give the example of if I took any of these guys that are attacking people and put them on a stage in front of an audience, they couldn't last an hour. They lose the audience in an hour because they are not performers and they are not entertainers at all for the world of entertainment known as YouTube. right? And to me, I just get sick of that type of stuff, and I get sick of being painted that way because it does hurt. Because I want to talk to people, and people will perceive me as some type of drama starter. But I'm like, I'll look at the people that they actually interact with, and I'll be like, "Oh, the guy you interact with over there, that guy attacks people, and he does it all the time. I don't even do that. There is actually no evidence that I actually do that stuff. That's just people lying about me. But if you're so opposed to people doing drama, I'll say to the person, why are you talking to someone who actually attacks people? Because basically he is guilty. That guy over there is guilty of the thing that you think I'm guilty of. But yet you openly talk to him and you're worried about drama with me. Though I think a lot of people, even some bigger names on here, Sam OG, they just don't like my gaming opinions. I know it's childish, but these are older people that don't like what I have to say about the game. And one thing I've noticed is if they don't like what you got to say about the game, but they can't really argue with you, they degrade your character. And once they degrade your character, they can dismiss you along with your ideas and opinions. It's like, well, if we attack Steven and say he's awful, now we can just ignore Steven and his really good argument against what we believe, the majority of us. Now we can ignore that really good argument. It's really good against what we say, but now we can ignore it. We don't have to deal with it. And actually, we don't actually have any way of debating what he said. We actually don't have a way of saying what he says is wrong. So if we don't have a way of actually winning the argument with him, we'll degrade his character and dismiss him. So Sam OG, that's what I mean. And understand these people just brought it up today or last night, so I figured I'd respond to the whole thing. And that's my point there, an explanation. Anyway, now I can move on. Now I can move on. There you go. Black Rose is here. So I know you're listening, Black Rose. Hope the kids and all that are good. I'm on here early, dude. So I might start the coverage around 6 o'clock my time. That's about an hour. And I should be able to get the coverage in. You'll be able to hear the coverage before you go to take off, which will be good. Old school essentials and the OSR. Not covering it yet right now, just freehand. People are free to talk, ask questions. I mean, I don't want to dive too much into the actual content. And it's old school essentials, just rehashing of the old game. It's like, we can talk about it, but there's several OSR games I have statements on. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I usually only talk about games that I personally have played or ran. I have definitely played a bit so many years ago, the Dungeon Crawl Classics, but the others I'm going to talk about are ones where I went and talked to people that I know that games with a lot of OSR games, and I asked them, what are the top games that you would say define what we now know as the OSR? What sort of the starting point? What games really define the OSR? And I talked to people that I know that gamed and ran these games, like played them and ran them. And I talked to them and got their statements on it. And yeah. So Dungeon Crawl Classic is more going to be from me. I only played a bit of it. It's interesting. The meat grinder effect going in was interesting. I think I did pretty good at that. But besides that, the rest were games I have not touched yet. Yet. Mind you, yet. I have played some new games. The dice mechanic's pretty simple and straightforward. The tunnel thing going in with all the different character stuff. It's a meat grinder effect that I'm used to, or the funnel, sorry. I don't mind the meat grinder effect. It's almost like it's meant to be there. I'd say it's one of the few games where I would say it's purposely done, because it makes me think old school when I know that AD&D 1E is only meant to be a bit of a meat grinder at the start, and that's actually not the game, right? And DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, makes me think that the guys who made it misunderstood that to be how you play old school D&D. And then they applied this effect to the game. And I even said that right away when I see comments about the guys who made DCC. They talk as if AD&D 1E had the same effect. I'm like, well, no, I knew right away these guys were confused. I was like, no, that only is an effect with inexperienced players. Once you understand designer intent, there should never be a starting meat grinder after that. You should be able to, most of the time, make one character and play all the way through. Like, a good chance you'll survive every time after you understand AD&D 1E. Like, it's not designer intent to be a meat grinder. And so I think a flawed view of AD&D 1E's gaming style is what ended up developing, or what the mindset they went in thinking they were justified in the way they developed DCC to be the sort of the system of going through multiple characters where you can die. Now, I don't mind it because I look back at Traveler, and I know Traveler has, I guess you want to look at it as a system where you could potentially lose a number of characters before you even start the game. So the idea that you lose characters before you dive in, fair enough. It's the one game where I would say, given how the likelihood of death with characters, you probably don't want to put too much of a you don't want to think of a backstory with characters. That would be something you want to establish after you get past that part of the system, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would say about that. That's my take on the funnel system and whatnot. One second. Responding to someone. That's what I get for coming on too early. Oop. Okay, they're done responding to people. What was the other part of the question you asked? The odd dice. Well, it's definitely odd. I think that's just sometimes I think when here's what I would criticize your dice system in this way. Sometimes I think people are just trying to be different, and I think that's dumb. That's what I think of DCC's dice system. It's an overkill of an attempt to be different when it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't care about dice the way some people do in the hobby. So I know, but the tabletop role playing games and the hobby itself is personal. It's always personal. So it's whatever you're okay with or not okay with. I don't care if I'm using a D6 or a D20 or multiple D6s or multiple D10s. I don't give a fuck as long as the dice work. That's always my aim, and that's where that doesn't make a difference to me. It's the gameplay. Like I like some things, like say go back to Ghostbusters and they put these additional dice rolls in for effects, hero points, stuff like this, where it's, if you look at the old school, I like things that are innovative and change how the game can be played, the experience with it. I like innovative stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of things that to me don't make a huge difference, right? Like when people go, I'm sick of using a D20. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, whatever system you're using, does it work? When you roll the dice, do you miss or hit? Yeah. I mean, some minor things I can be okay with. Like I used the D100 with the Neo TTRPG system, and the effect that it has, the effect, and see, I care about effect, not so much about if the dice are what dice I'm using, other than effect. So having a wider range where there's less extreme, like less times you're going to roll a 100 and less times you're going to roll a one, and there's a lot of that middle ground where either you miss or hit, and there's a lot less extremes. I like that. I like it balances out gameplay in a way that I like. So the effect of that type of dice rolling compared to the D20, I like. Would I really care if you're using a D20 or D100? It's not a big issue to me. I do like the idea of not hitting the extreme failure or the extreme success all the time. So that is an odd area where if the dice have that type of difference in outcome, I'm okay with dice being different, right? Then I see the point of how you use the dice or what dice you're using. But if you use multiple D6s and you could have used a D20, just say for whatever reason, let's just say this, for example, if the outcome is as likely to be extreme or not extreme or in the middle as another dice system, then I don't care which one you use. So that doesn't matter to me. The odd dice with DCC, that's one of those rare things where I'm just like, I don't know, dude. D3s, D. The odd dice seem a little stupid to me. Maybe that's just me. Sorry. Evening. What I like about DCC is how they made starting characters in the funnel without class or anything. They really nobody's in clean slates. They only get direction if they survive. Well, that's what I'm saying about the background. Like doing caring about the details about the character only matters if the character lives anyway. So it's not like you want to come up with a concept for the character before you get past that point, right? It's okay, John. There's John. There's Tom. There's whatever, and you can care about maybe who they are afterwards, right? They're pretty much nobodies before you get through the system. But my only problem with the DCC thing is a Traveler. I like how they have a system where you can die beforehand, but it's not inspired by some misunderstanding of another game. DCC's funnel system, I believe, I've not heard it said directly, but I believe it's a misunderstanding of AD&D 1E. See, AD&D 1E, if you're inexperienced, like you've never really played before, maybe make multiple characters up, because it's about player skill. And meaning at the first one, you know nothing about D&D, you're likely to lose a lot of characters running into gelatinous cubes, right? Mimics, stuff like this. But the idea is, in old school D&D, is you learn. And once you learn to avoid combat, learn to be careful, pay attention, most of your starting characters, one sec. Most characters, after you learn the things about AD&D 1E, most characters you start, you should be able to survive most of the time without making multiple characters. Like once you learn to pay attention to mimics, gelatinous cubes, traps, once you learn that you should be avoiding combat, being careful in combat, a lot of times you can start a character and survive. Like that's the thing of that's player skill. That's learning to be a good player, get experience, and then learn. Some people in the hobby, sadly, a lot of people, sadly, can spend 20 to 30 years playing AD&D 1E and not know this. Like actually just keep playing very carelessly and running into combat when you should be avoiding pretty much all combat as much as you possibly can from levels 1 to 3. They'll keep running at combat because they're trying to play it more like a combat game. And actually, DK, I don't know how many guys are big YouTubers here, and you can go back into their content even like last year, and you can talk to these guys and you ask them what D&D is. They'll say it's a combat game. Now, since I've said otherwise, suddenly all these guys that were calling it a combat game that are bigger YouTubers than me, old school D&D guys, are now have all gone changing their language suddenly. It's gone from it's a combat game to it's a survival game. And really, it's a survival game. People forgot that detail. And you're not meant to play it like a board game with miniatures. Miniatures really confuse a lot of guys because they play it a bit like a board game when they're playing with miniatures. One thing is if you get into D&D, you start realizing it's a survival game. And if you look at the encounters, the encounter information, before they even use language for non-combat encounters, they don't do that. They just call encounters. And all the advice is to avoid. Negotiate your way out. Avoid combat. It's resource training. It's all avoid, 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 avoid. So you should be avoiding combat, not going into it. And you should be careful of wandering monsters, not wanting to be in combat. That's why wandering monsters should be a threat to you. And you shouldn't half-ass that, because you can likely die getting into encounters from levels 1 to 3. You might start off class fighter, but you're really just a farmer. And the game doesn't really start until level 9. And that's, again, AD&D 1E guys. Most of their DMs, unlike 2E DMs, most AD&D 1E DMs stop the game at level 8 and 10. Designers assume you're running it up to level 20. I mean, they strongly assume this. And they even bring out content like the manual planes and stuff like this, assuming you are going to understand that the game really doesn't start until level 9. The idea that you're ending at level 8 means you don't understand AD&D 1E. You're not even classified really as a hero until level 9, because you're not capable of being a hero until level 9. Levels 1 to 3, you're a farmer. You're just a farmer trying to get experience. It's only level 9 when you're capable of actually being called out to go face the dragon, right? Second Ed was a lot better at communicating this stuff. This is why I personally think second edition got this all right. This is what a lot of 1E guys don't know, because they never crossed over to 2E. They didn't see that most DMs took it to level 20. They didn't see, like I would tell all my players coming in, I would tell them as a second Ed DM, the game doesn't start until level 9. They'd be like, really? Like, yeah, the game doesn't start until level 9. I'd be like, all the levels up to level 9 is just backstory. Like we're not even officially started. I don't even count the game as officially started until you're level 9. We're going to do your backstory. Think about levels 1 to 9 as a very long session 0, right? And only at level 9 are you capable of being a hero. And the game actually assists you. That's like, I read the manual planes. I could tell the AD&D 1E DMs didn't understand the manual planes. Like if you read it, you'd understand they set up the manual planes because they assume high-level gaming is going to be a regular thing. Because you're not even a hero until level 9, even in 1E. Right? And DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics guys, are guilty of misunderstanding AD&D 1E completely. So completely that they designed their game to function in a way they thought would be popular with other AD&D 1E people, because the funnel is something like the meat grinder that they assume is a regular thing in AD&D 1E, which it's not if you understand the game. Oh man, I sat there and educated myself really well. I've read all the material. Like the raw guys, the rules as written guys will always say, why don't you read the material? Why don't you read the material? Well, then I'll actually hear them describing these misunderstandings about AD&D 1E. They actually, they preach about reading the stuff, DK. On X, you've seen this, or elsewhere. I know you've heard of this. Rules as written guys preaching about reading the material. They read it and they still misunderstand AD&D 1E. I'm like, well, dude, I don't even do rules as written. I'm not a rules as written guy, but I've actually read the material and I understand the stuff better than they do. And I don't even follow that course of thinking, like that line of thinking. I'm quite the opposite. I go with Gary Gygax's statement. You master a game through rules as written raw. That's what he thinks. But he thinks after you master the game, you're as educated and well understood on the game as designers are. And how do you make a new edition? When you make a new edition, like you go from 1E to 2E, you're changing core stuff. What Gary believed is once you master one of these games to rules as written like a DM should, you'll understand the game the same way the designer team at TSR understands the game, and the same tweaks they're making from one edition to another you can do without destroying the game. And you can do that so you could tailor things towards the experience you want. And actually, it's actually okay to adjust. He actually expects you to. Like, he actually thinks it's a requirement that you do this. He thinks we're all going to have a different style. And we're all going to want to get different things out of D&D. And D&D is meant to be generic, so you can get different things out of it. He actually thinks that you adjusting how combat works, like in detail, to the core rules, not just optional rules, but to the core, changing how Thaco works, if you wish. If it benefits what you're looking for, he actually expects, at the time he was alive, he made statements where he expects you to do this. Right? Gary says, master the game through raw and then make changes, even tweaking the core, just like a game designer would, because he expects that you understand the game the same way a game designer would. From 1E to 2E, you drop the battle matrix and even adjust Thaco. And Thaco is simplified. Well, if changing the core would break D&D, how can you do that? You can't. But second ed is still D&D. It still has the same feel, same structure, same everything. Right? Nothing has changed. Like no one says it's not D&D when you realize it's tweaked core stuff. But you can do that when you understand the rules. DCC, I don't mind it, but I mean, it's just like it's like an extreme version of D&D in many ways. I wasn't that impressed. I wasn't like, I mean, it's like, because it's another medieval fantasy game where I get like, it's like I can do everything in that game that I can do with D&D. So I don't hate it. I don't think it's like awful, but it's almost like I feel like it's not needed, because what it is copying a game style that is not an actual game style. Like, it thinks it's copying the meat grinder effect from AD&D 1E, and that will appeal to people. But I'm like, no, that's not actually a gaming style. That AD&D 1E meat grinder is something that will happen to you when you're inexperienced. When you're an experienced player, the game completely changes. Most characters you make should survive. Period. End story. That's why it's based on player skill, because it's before you have the experience and improve your skill. Of course, it's a meat grinder. It's when you improve and understand to avoid things that then you survive. That's why it's a survival game. And survival is the success thing. So in a survival game, a meat grinder would be completely opposite of the purpose of the game. The designer wants you to make one character and survive. That's success. The idea that you're making multiple characters means something is failing in the system. Or either you're failing as a player, but the game is not meant to do that to you. The game is only meant to do that to someone who's inexperienced in learning. It's like playing Bushido. Bushido, you can dive into the social stuff. You can ruin the reputation of your character. The game could be over before your character ever did, through just the reputation destruction. But the idea is, once you learn how to socialize in Bushido games, you should be able to start the game and be fine and play the politics and go up the ladder as freely as you want. It should not just continue to be that inexperienced experience. The idea of the meat grinder in AD&D 1E is just an inexperienced experience that you're having. It's not something meant to be continued on. Now, I'm just giving some wisdom out here. I'm teaching people. I'm teaching people about old school Dungeons and Dragons, because I do that. I educate people. I have to educate a lot of old guys, especially sad. I have to educate a lot of guys that started in the 70s, because they'll actually do this stuff. They'll actually misunderstand AD&D 1E, for example, for like 30 or 40 years, and I have to educate them. Like it is like that. I'm not trying to be hateful, but I constantly find myself educating guys who have been in the hobby for longer than I have. But I have to teach them, or I have to go to the Pro OSR guys or people around them that say, read the material, and they misunderstand AD&D 1E, and I have to educate them too. And I don't even follow the concept of rules as written. But me, a non-raw guy, has to teach the raw guy what AD&D 1E is. I have to teach them it's not a war game. I have to teach them it's a survival game. I have to teach them it's not a meat grinder game. Right? I shouldn't have to do that, but I do, because these are the guys that are supposedly reading the material. I'm like, dude, you read it, you just don't understand it. And to know that over 90% of AD&D 1E DMs stopped at levels 8 and 10 and never went further. What a shame, because there's a whole section of the game that exists that designers and TSR invested time and money into, because it's something that you're meant to be doing, and it's just completely fucking ignored. The manual of planes is almost used by nobody. If you look at the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, which I covered last night, and the Wilderness Survival Guide, that's not made really to enhance the modules that you're running. That's made, DK, in a way that you forget that the old sandboxing way is real. And those books still acknowledge not the module redefining a sandbox. They are there to help you with pure sandbox gameplay. No module, you make up the adventure as you go. That old school, the sandbox that you'd still find in the original Traveler. That's the sandbox gaming they did with OD&D and BECME. The modules for BECME are there to teach you the game, not to replace you yourself needing to make further adventures. So the module concept with BECME is there to teach you, but you're still meant to make your own adventures and possibly even your own setting with a pure sandbox system, right? Modules then become a tournament thing, and I understood why they were made, because they're made for the public to be able to have an experience without you needing to go through all this. What TSR finds out when they start doing modules for the tournament thing is people want to take the modules and run them at home. And they start realizing people want to buy them. It's like accidentally coming into a market you don't realize is going to be a money maker, right? Like you don't realize, oh, these pre-made adventures are big. Oh, whoa, they're bigger than what we thought they were. We thought we were just going to challenge people with the tournaments with these because we're nerds and hobbyists and gamers at TSR. That's what they thought they were going to do. They didn't know that they were going to sell like hotcakes. That's a discovery. But what happens is the modules start doing all the work for people, and sooner or later, a complete redefining a sandbox is focused only on the module so it doesn't kill their sales. And what's funny is a lot of people forget that the Wilderness Survival Guide and Dungeoneer Survival Guide is strangely supportive of pure sandbox, not modules, not the redefining, because I don't call what modules do a sandbox at all. All right. They call their the freedom in the module, the randomness they call a sandbox. And I'm like, that's not a term they use for a module. I call it a loose railroad. So like the Temple of Elemental Evil, loose railroad. Right? Not they say, well, there's sandbox. No, there's not. If it has an end that you have to go to, that's a railroad. I don't care if it's a straight path or a crooked one. Where you boom, 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 boom to the end. That's still a railroad. I call those not sandbox modules, loose railroads. So either you got a direct railroad or a very loose railroad, right? I never call it sandbox because to me, sandbox has it's already defined. It was defined in OD&D, it was defined in BECME, and it was defined in Traveler. Clearly, sandbox is pure freedom. No end aim at all. Players they lead the game, they even decide the end. Not you, the DM. You go along and you improvise and you develop from the ideas that you and the players come up with. They do stuff, you react to it. You connect the things that you're reacting with between sessions. You build from what you've improvised in at that first session. You start building between sessions. They do more. They work on the stuff that you've already built. Now you're improvising more, and you keep building and building and building. And through that process, you're building adventures. On top of that, you're also building a setting. You might start with just some random world with a city or a town. They start in the town. Well, okay, they want to go somewhere. You gotta have a forest. Okay, you're gonna make a forest. You might give the forest a name. Start coming up with details between the sessions of what the forest is, what's going to be in there. And you start developing adventures and a setting at the same time through that sandbox of improvisation and then working on it between sessions and developing. They met this guard. Oh, you're going to see the guard is actually related to the mayor. You never really, it's not the plan you had initially going in. It's you improvise and then you decide you're going to connect this between sessions, right? And you build and you build. That's how Mystera was built. Mystera, the setting for Beckme, that's a sandbox setting. That's a start in a simple place and then build out through sandbox gameplay. Pure sandbox adventuring, pure sandbox setting building. And the Dungeoneer Survival Guide, the Wilderness Survival Guide, and even the Manual Planes is there to help you bring first off, like say you develop a setting for the Wilderness and Dungeoneer Survival Guides. On top of this, you can also tie it into the overall sort of wheel of what the guys put together, sort of a central planning stage for the different settings for D&D, right? So you could connect your world to the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. And of course, higher level gaming. And people forget whenever I hear sandbox used as related to modules, I'm like, nope, I refuse, because that's not what that is. If an adventure has an end that you have to go to, that's a railroad. I don't care how free you are before you get there. It's either a straight one or a loose one. Sandbox is pure freedom. And again, it's redefined, because sandbox, if it's pure freedom, which it's defined as originally with OD&D and Traveler, pure freedom. It's made clear what a sandbox is. So when you get to a module that has a clear direction and that you have to go to, and they say there's sandbox in there, that's changing. It's redefining what a sandbox is. That's what I mean about redefining it. So sandbox really is not in any module. No module is sandbox. They're 100% railroads, every single one of them, and either loose or straight. Period. I haven't rushed to cover the DCC Dungeon Crawl Classic because it just I wasn't impressed with it. I just wasn't impressed. I was bored. I found myself bored of it. And so I didn't think it was like horrible, but I'm like, dude, it's like, if I want to do this, I'll just go play D&D. It's like D&D already covers this timeline, this setting. Like I don't even mind Dragon Quest. I ran Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is more, D&D is not wargaming. But if you wanted to have a wargamer really try to turn D&D closer into what a wargamer wanted D&D to be, Dragon Quest is more like what a wargamer would want from Dungeons and Dragons. So to me, D&D is clearly not wargaming, and that's even clear through Gary and TSR. They move away from it. It's like there's some inspiration, some language used. That's it. Clearly not wargaming, about individual characters, character development, all this other stuff, right? That's all really clear even at the OD&D starting point. And you got to remember the chainmail rules for combat are optional. They're never mandatory. Pure theater of the mind is mandatory. And most people don't have miniatures. As I explained the other night, 80% of DMs were running pure theater of the mind combat from 1974 right up into the mid-90s. Mid-90s, you start seeing more miniature gameplay because finally amateurs have been more frequently making plastic and terrain, because terrain was still being experimented on in the early 90s. So they didn't even really define terrain that well. right? Terrain was still being fucking experimented with. Actually, some of the first early real deep experiments happened in the 90s, not from 74 up until the 90s. So you start seeing terrain really worked on in the early 90s. Plastic starts being made. I had a great guy on here, DK. I mentioned this already, AJ Pickett, and AJ Pickett he was at the starting point of a lot of this stuff. He was in early, especially in the online world, where he was part of helping them, like being part of a group that was making the terrain stuff for the early stuff, and finally making plastic. So that was a great interview, because he was a guy who was, sort of at the starting point of the stuff. By the mid 90s, you do see more guys finally making plastic, but it's really, miniatures does not become a regular thing in the hobby until WotC takes it mainstream. When WotC takes over TSR, they finally go mainstream with plastic miniatures. Here's what happened, DK. A lot of guys that got into the hobby early took 20 years off, 15 years off, 25 years off, and they came back into the hobby after WotC took over. And since they don't know the history that well, they came in, miniatures were already there for them to be used. They start using them. And then in their minds, miniatures were always a thing. They just don't know the history of the hobby. They don't know from 74 up until the early 90s, 80% of DMs in the fucking hobby never used miniatures. We never used the chainmail rules for combat. It was optional all the way through, mandatory, even up to second edition. So there's not one single time, there's not a single TSR edition that has miniatures as mandatory gameplay for combat. The default way of playing the game is pure theater of the mind combat. That's default. That's mandatory, because if you're not taking the optional miniature thing, there's not 3 ways to play the game in combat area. There's 2. You're either miniatures or you're playing with pure theater of the mind. Mandatory is pure theater of the mind. So I had to teach guys that it's really not wargaming. They'll come back with simple arguments like, well, we use as campaigns. Campaigns comes from wargaming. I'm like, dude, of course. But they talk about character development too, which comes from a drama class. It doesn't mean we're a bunch of fucking actors, right? Again, I've said this many times on these streams and in my videos, and I'll keep to it. Tabletop role-playing games is its own thing, and it borrows from different areas. Narrative, which is from storytelling, borrows from it some. It's not storytelling. Story emerges, right? But it's not storytelling itself. It borrows from drama class, elements of acting, performance, and character development. Of course it does. So there's some performance. There's some borrowed, but we're not drama class. We borrow some from what you would call gaming, board games. It all comes to a combination package. Well, here's the truth, DK. I was in a community of over 6,000 to 7,000 people. 95% were pure theater of the mind. When I got online, Open RPG and Merc, over 90% of all DMs from Open RPG to Merc, the early gaming before anything, were all pure theater of the mind. Right? Almost every second edition DM I knew was pure theater of the mind. Almost every guy was pure theater of the mind. As far as what owned them, well, okay, if you take 10,000 and say 500 people own miniatures, enough to actually game with, outside having a miniature. See, there's a difference between having a miniature you bring to the table and having enough miniatures to actually play with miniatures like it's an all-out game. What I seen was maybe 4% used what you would call images or chips, quarters, pieces, right? Maybe with a big dragon they got, but your character might be represented by like a chip thing. And that was very few people. If you know anything, even the guys who were into miniatures in the hobby admit, and I mean, this is the vast majority of them, that it was not, they weren't being used as gaming. They were being used as it was a painting hobby. So even though they were cool and liked, because it was a barrier for people to actually play the game, and most kids couldn't afford it. So you would call D&D almost like a poor man's hobby, because most kids, poor kids can't afford to play Magic. That is higher middle class kids, most of them playing Magic. The war gamers themselves are mostly adults that have jobs and have money to buy the miniatures for wargaming. When it came to D&D, most kids had to cycle their money together just to buy certain books. Right? They couldn't all just, and some DMs could afford it. The DMs usually would have more money than others, so the DMs might be older guys, right? But this is the reality of the hobby. 80% of guys did pure theater of the mind. I'm going to correct you on this, DK, and I'm not going to accept a false picture even from you. So, I mean, either you get on reality or we're going to have a disagreement. It's going to be a disagreement where the facts are on my side and not on yours. Just got to be straight with you, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't mean a lot, but it's like I have to correct a lot of old school D&D guys that want miniatures to be, they want to rewrite the history of our hobby. And I just don't allow it. I know the reality. I was there active, and I mean active, in a large community and multiple large communities, talked to very large communities online when they started in the early 2000s. I was part of the DMing early on Merc. I was part of the DMing early on OpenRPG, which was the only places where games were being ran. And over 90% of DMs online, just like in person, were doing pure theater of the mind, not using miniatures or any form of miniatures or any concept of miniatures or anything online. And we never had to because we were all used to doing pure theater of the mind combat. And that's the majority of people. It's WotC in the early 2000s finally goes mainstream with plastic miniatures. And from 2000 to 2010, you see a lot of guys starting to come back into the hobby that were in the early like 80s and some at the late 70s. They come back in, they grab onto miniatures, and some of them actually suck at running games without miniatures. I just got to be real with you. They didn't even try. But they have egos, DK. That's the issue. And their egos are is we're good DMs, and if we can't do it, nobody can. But I'm like, well, you're just lying. Just because you suck at it, which you do, doesn't mean over 80% of the guys didn't do it, and we do it like breathing air. And you got to understand, we had a bunch of mediocre guys coming in that just had egos that were bigger than their actual talent. And that's a lot of the miniature guys were big. We still, 90% of the time you had to. You had to. And it was almost non-existent. Like I just got to get at people. It was non-existent. That wasn't wargaming. So when you hear people going D&D as wargaming, it just doesn't hold water at all. But they'll say it casually like it does. Like I'll do all this explanation like I just did here, DK. And they'll be like, I think it's wargaming. Can you explain it? Well, it has the word campaigns. No, dude. Beyond that, can you explain it? No. I just gave a very nuanced, detailed, backed by facts and evidence and everything statement, really explained myself, clarified, went into all the details. Can you argue against what I'm saying? You're wrong. Beyond saying I'm wrong, can you argue down what I said? No, I just think you're wrong, and it is wargaming. This is the level of art debating I'll get from people. They are simply, most of the old school D&D guys are not mentally capable of arguing this because I'm telling the truth. They don't have an argument. That's why I keep getting these really weak responses of just dismiss all the big detailed stuff I said and go, I think it's wargaming. It's not, dude. And if you go back to 74, less than 90% or less than 100%, only like less than 10%, sorry, of wargamers actually crossed over to do tabletop role-playing games. And most of those guys left D&D and called it a fairy game. And at first, from 74 up to about 78, a lot of the wargamer guys at first thought, you're trying to replace our hobby. But by 78, they realized D&D was so separate from what they were doing, they stopped feeling threatened by D&D. And you could tell as they stopped feeling threatened by D&D, more games are coming out from wargamers that are TTRPGs. Well, why would wargamers start putting out tabletop role-playing games if they feel like it's a threat to their hobby? It's not. That's why. And so you start getting tabletop role-playing games because they realize it's not going to replace their actual wargaming. They realize these are not the same things. And so Dragon Quest, if you really want to get down to it, is more of what you would call closer to, if you were to try to turn D&D into something closer a wargamer would actually want. Dragon Quest is more of that than D&D itself is. So Dragon Quest is sort of an example of taking, what if you if Dungeons and Dragons was more influenced by the wargaming mindset, you would get Dragon Quest. And I jokingly said to one guy next the other day, I said, well, instead of calling D&D wargaming, because it's not, I said in not so many words, I said, just go play Dragon Quest. And that blew up. People were quite mad at me about that. Well, not a bunch of people. I don't get a bunch of arguing back, but I get some. And guys are like, it is wargaming. I'm like, well, can you explain? And I post my video. I did a whole stream about the miniatures and everything. I post the video and guys would be like, I'm not watching that. Well, of course, dude, you're not going to watch that because that completely tears down your statement. That it's wargaming. So then I put it into the video and I've been explaining it since. It's not wargaming. D&D is not wargaming. It's not even close to wargaming. It's so anti-wargaming that 3rd edition, 4th edition, and 5e is more in the vein of wargaming D&D than any old school TSR edition. I mean, in 3rd edition, miniatures are pretty much close to mandatory. In 4e, they just straight up are. Like, they give you some options for the thing, but it's more that you're going to play with miniatures than not with 3rd edition. 3rd edition leans more into the expectation of wargamers with D&D than OD&D, BECME, AD&D 1E, or 2nd edition. So it's like, I'm like, how ironic that the guys that seem to hate 3rd edition most are the guys that look at TSR D&D, which is completely moved away from wargaming, not even related, and they look at an edition, 3rd edition, that is closer to what they would want, and they reject it. That's weird. I was like, if I was a wargamer, I'd be more satisfied with 3rd edition than I would with OD&D, BECME, AD&D 1E, or 2nd edition. I'd be more satisfied playing 3rd edition. It's given what they say they expect things to be. I'm like, 3rd edition is more up your alley. Dragon Quest and 3rd edition and 4th edition and 5e are more what you'd want. So I don't understand the vitriol from guys who call D&D wargaming ironically, towards editions of D&D that are more leaning into what they think D&D should be than any TSR edition is. What happens, DK, is guys come up with these arguments. They make shit up in their minds. They state this over years, and they start believing it. And they get a warped view of reality. And they really do. And by the time you look back at real history, what you start realizing is real history completely collapses on them. The narrative that they believe about the history of D&D is just not true. It just does not support their views. All right, at all. It completely collapses. So many views of old school D&D completely collapse. And I'm like, how can we get mad at WotC people when our community is so full of agendas, deceitful agendas and lies? Like, when I grew up, I was told this: clean up your own backyard before you yell at other people. Like, don't go tell that guy to clean up his backyard when yours is a mess. And I've always believed in that principle, that if you have a mess in your own backyard, you should be the last person preaching at somebody else about cleaning up their backyard. And when I look at the old school tabletop role-playing community, we have a massive, destructive mess in our backyard. And the fact that any of our guys are out at the fence line yelling over at WotC about cleaning up their backyard, I'm like, you are an absolute disgrace. Come back here and clean this up first, and then we'll say what we have to say about WotC. But until you clean up these lies, these massive lies that you've carried on for decades, until you clean them up, you should shut the fuck up about WotC. That's my take right there. There's what I think of our situation. I think there's a part of the old school that is absolutely two-faced and full of shit. And I'm old school. I'm not some new school guy trying to call out the old school or trying to attack individuals, but I just think that it's like I said the other night, I'm a raindrop of truth in the old school against an army of liars. Like deceitful agendas and lies are backed by armies in the old school. The truth has very few people. They're like raindrops against an ocean, right? They're raindrops, raindrops. Very few people push the truth because the truth doesn't tell you what you want to be true. There's a difference between what the truth is and what you want the truth to be. And it just doesn't support it. D&D, old school D&D, is not whatsoever in any way, not even slightly, wargaming. Period. End of story. And there is no fucking debate. That's just a fact. There's no debate on this. I can't lose. The facts are just going to tell you this. It's like 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care how much you go, I disagree. I think 1 + 1 = Jello. Well, it doesn't. So it doesn't fucking matter how many times you say that. You can keep saying 1 + 1 = Jello. It will still equal fucking 2. I'm the one saying it equals 2. The guys who say this is wargaming are the ones that say 1 + 1 = Jello. There is no debate, and I will not give the debate credence because I don't give the other side credibility unless they have something, which they don't. They're not worthy of debating because they don't take a position that is worthy of debate. It is complete delusion. It's a complete set of lies. It's not even worth taking serious. Right. They want to dismiss me. No, in reality, it's all projection because they've taken the position that should be outright dismissed because it's all fucking delusional. And it's not backed up by anything. Oh, we'll use the word can't. Just shut the fuck up. It's not, dude, you're simple-minded. Take your simple-minded nonsense and go elsewhere. It doesn't belong here. Period. Period. And I mean, DK, you've heard it. That's why I get mad at some guys on panels, and I get right frustrated. I'd yell at the panel because I'd see a guy whose YouTube channel, who I like the guy. Me and him get along now, and I know it's not him that I get mad at, but he's had some people on where I'm watching, and a guy on his stream will say you can't really do combat without miniatures, and I'm just like, what the fuck? That 100%. Exploring, surviving, math, fun, and games. 1,000,000%. I love fucking exploring. I love finding new shit. I love encountering the world. And you do it through a character. You're there to experience the world, right? That's why I say it's like combat is combat and all that, but it's like, what are things I'll make a big issue about? It's like I'll pitch about the atmosphere. Like if it's raining, telling you that you feel the raindrop and it runs down your cheek and you feel a little bit of that stickiness. Really quick descriptions, but a way of feeling the world. And then describing places as you walk through and remembering to do that. Math, fun, games. If you don't do these details, if you're just saying, okay, so many days go by, people are not experiencing the world. You don't always have to be focused in every second, but every so often you zoom into the group traveling. And you tell them their surroundings, the beautiful mountains, the sky at the time of day it is and what it looks like, surrounding ruins that they might see. And sometimes ruins aren't even there to be explored as if there's going to be monsters. It's just going to tell you about the setting. You go over there and you see old graves. And it's not like monsters are even going to lift up. It's just going to tell you about the place. You're going to experience beautiful scenery, different atmospheres, different biomes as you go through. Sometimes it is monsters that can be interesting, but you don't make it all the time. Don't turn it into a video game. Make it more than a video game. Have people experiencing the world as they explore. And developing the character helps with the way you take that in, because it really does help. And this is what AD&D 1E guys figured out after like a year of gaming with a character. Old school 1E DMs would say this: when players develop a character more, they become more attached to the game. They show up more consistently. And this is the same statements AD&D 1E DMs say all the time about players. They play a character for a long time, and once they know who that character is, They admit they have a better experience with the gaming sessions. I'm like, yeah, it's because once you know who your guy is, the way you explore the world and take it in is deeper. Because now you got somebody you know how they think, you know how they would react to something. There's a smoothness because now you no longer have to think anymore. Like it's like you're playing the guy Tommy. You know who Tommy is. If monsters come out of a thing, you know how Tommy's going to react. You don't have to break your brain thinking about it no more. You played Tommy long enough that you know how he's going to react to social interaction. You know how he's going to react to monsters. So now it's just like breathing air when you play that character because you know who it is. And so now you can spend more time playing the game rather than trying to think, what would my guy say? What would my guy do? Like at the point of development, yeah, you know, right? So that becomes more important. But of course, the monsters are there to definitely remind you it's dangerous. It's not just a video game. It's meant to remind you that you are in a fantasy world. There are monsters, there are things happening. And if you measure them in right, it doesn't feel just like a bored video game, right? It feels like there is a danger to this world. There is a surreal type of monster. There is this going on, right? But if you skip it, this stuff becomes second nature to you, like you just, or not second nature, but second hand, where you're more concerned with moving a miniature around and moving through the dungeon and all the different encounters. And that's all you do. And you don't explore the world, you don't care. And part of exploring too is that part of a game master. This is what I like about sandbox and not doing modules. Sandbox means part of you is making this up between sessions, but even as you go. And it allows you to develop these things. If you think something beautiful should be there, you can just add it. You want to have that travel be something deep. And that's where you get to that wilderness survival guide thing. That is great for pure sandboxing, not module gaming, but pure sandboxing, because it gives you all the extra tools you need for your mind to think and add things as your players are going through areas and developing things in between the sessions. That's why I like sandboxing more than, say, a set module with an end. I like players leading the way, just like they do in Traveler. But I think I like them doing that in D&D as well. And it's all part of the gimmick. So all that is special to me. But that is just wargaming. Wargamers get away from that stuff in a lot of ways. They'll lean more into the board gaming if that's what they want to do, right? And I'm like, well, D&D is not exactly that at all. And nor have we played D&D from 74 up until whatever. Like third edition is more getting away from what you're talking about. So you're talking about real old school, right? But that's because it's theater of the mind. It's all in the mind, the imagination. When you say you're exploring a place, it's not going to be on a board. It's in your mind. You're seeing the beautiful sunlight in your mind, right? You can't see that on a board with miniatures. You're seeing it here. Everything is in the mind. And that's why it's so important to understand these things and how important it is as a DM to get used to using this through verbal. And you can, when you see Math and DK and anybody else watching, the imagination is the most powerful tool any player has. And you learn this. Any player should know this just from reading a novel. Go read. You'll figure out just how powerful this is from reading. It's most cases, this is why people like books better than movies. Because a movie can only show you so much, but with your imagination, once you realize how powerful it is, the way you take in a book is deeper than what any movie could give you, right? It really is. Like, it's going to be a deeper experience to most things. Very few movies, the exceptions might be the Lord of the Rings movies, but I mean, outside, and I mean the old ones, but I mean, outside of that, most books are going to be, by the reader, considered better to read the book than it is to watch something made, like into a movie or a TV show, right? Because the imagination is so fucking powerful, right? And that includes in combat too. And combat's a wonderful thing to be here, not here, moving pieces. And it's you just gotta, it's little things. Once you know tricks, as a DM, you're fine. And that's why theater of the mind is usually the preferred way to play by old school guys, right? And that's the way, and we should all be happy with that, guys, because miniatures becomes more new school. Miniatures is more third edition, fourth edition, and 5e. At the old school, one of the separations of old school from new school is the lack of miniature use. It's not it's not like old school guys will sometimes act like it's a prominent part of the game. Welcome back, Black Rose. Hope you heard some of that. I don't care. I don't care. All good. Okay. Okay. All right. Great talk, guys. I appreciate the yappy yap. Yappity yap yap. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Getting ready to cover things. Almost. Close. So yeah. All right. Let's get into old school essentials. Let's get into the fluff. As we always do. Some background. This is a lot less about mechanics than that. This coverage. It's more about covering the sort of backstory of the essentials, how it was put together, and why it is. Because I want to sell this to people that might not have picked this up, because this is something Samuel G recently got into, and I think there's a lot of goodness here, right? Bits and pieces, but I've been mostly busy fixing things both online and house, also prepping the game tomorrow. Yeah, 12 plus hours. Last week was 14 hours, my dude. 14 hours. Old school DMing. I fucking love it. That's getting into flow, though. Right? Okay. Influences and birth of old school essentials. The original D&D revival began before OSR existed. To understand old school essentials, you first have to understand that it is the product of almost 20 years of old school D&D fans trying to preserve a style of play they believe was disappearing. When TSR collapsed in 1997 and Wizards of the Coast acquired Dungeons and Dragons, many players embraced 3rd edition. This is true, actually, the majority. Others continued playing earlier editions, not necessarily because they disliked 3rd edition, but because they preferred the style of play found in original D&D, basic D&D, and both editions of AD&D. They valued faster rulings over detailed rules, dangerous exploration, resource management, player ingenuity over character abilities, dungeon and wilderness adventures, random encounters, and emergent stories. For many, this wasn't simply nostalgia. They believed these older games encouraged a fundamentally different style of play that was worth preserving. 3rd edition accidentally created the conditions. In 2000, Wizards of the Coast released Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition alongside the Open Game License, OGL. The OGL allowed publishers to legally reuse large portions of the game's rules. And that's exactly it, dude. Math and fun, math, fun, and games. I hope you hear that in my description, because to me, real old school guys really relate with what I'm saying, like what you're talking about. And what you're talking about is what I picture. And the atmosphere, the environment, the control over what's happening, so you can deliver these things for players like yourself, right? To give that experience that you're talking about. And you do that through here more than anywhere else. And so I know, I'm just assuming here that I'm assuming you're here and signed up to me because I say a lot of things you relate with. Because I know I'm describing what you're saying you're into. Right. And that's what I describe it all the time in my different streams and all that. Because that's the way old school was for me too. It was about exploring, experiencing from guys that knew this stuff. Right. Not the guys in error or trying to figure it out, but the guys who really. Yeah, and I played some war games too. I hope you've heard about me doing that. I respect war games, just like you. And they are fun. I played Warhammer. I'm not here to just respect war games. I'm just here to respect that tabletop role-playing games are different. And that's not to attack anyone. There's no intent on attacking anyone at all. I really do respect war games. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this misunderstanding. Oh, Stephen hates war games. No, I fucking play war games. War games are great. These are different. That's all I'm saying. And I think they're very clear because you're here to have a different experience than you would with a war game. Like you're saying, you're describing. War game is about problem solving. Is there elements? This, I think we both agree. There's elements of narrative and storytelling, right? But it's not storytelling, it's story emergent. But there's elements that we use for tabletop role playing. There's elements of performance from drama class. I think I'm going to make sense to you here, which is all part of the experience. We're not actors. We're not doing full drama class, just elements. Are there elements of problem solving and stuff from wargaming? There's elements of it we cycle in and we mix this to make a completely different gimmick. That's what I say, right? Okay, so cool. Being a little poetic there, but I'm very passionate about this stuff. So very important to me. So again, I'll repeat: the OGL allowed publishers to legally reuse large portions of the game's rules. Ironically, this decision made it practical for fans to recreate earlier editions of D&D. Rather than designing entirely new fantasy RPGs, publishers could. One second. Okay. Okay. Bathroom pizza time. Not bathroom pizza time. Reminding my uncle. My uncle is visiting here, and he has a deep voice. And when he walks by, our voices can clash. And he, like, I ask him not to walk by when I'm doing the stream, but he forgets sometimes. So I'm just like, dude, I can't compete with your voice. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. He forgets about this stuff sometimes. He's an older guy. Part of the deal. Okay, so I'll sort of repeat here. Ironically, this decision made it practical for fans to recreate earlier editions of D&D. Rather than designing entirely new fantasy RPGs, publishers could legally produce games that closely emulated classic D&D. The OGL didn't create the desire to preserve older editions, but it made the retro clone movement legal and commercially practical, dramatically accelerating its growth. The first retro clones. During the mid 2000s, several games appeared whose goals were preservation rather than innovation. Some of the most influential were OSR, 2006. It recreated AD&D First Edition for publishers and players. Basic Fantasy RPG, 2006, inspired by basic D&D with some modern conventions. Labyrinth Lord, in 2007, recreated the 1981 Basic Expert BX rules. Swords and Wizardry, 2008, recreated original D&D. These books allowed new players to experience older editions without tracking down expensive or increasingly scarce TSR books. Just as importantly, they gave publishers a legal foundation for producing compatible adventures and supplements, helping old school gaming become an active publishing movement instead of simply fans replaying older books. The birth of the OSR, at the same time another movement was taking shape. People weren't just recreating old rules, they were trying to understand why early D&D had worked so well for so many groups. By the mid-2000s, many of the hobby's earliest players had decades of experience. They began looking back at the design philosophies of the 1970s and early 1980s, asking what had been gained, what had been lost, and why older games created different experiences at the table. Hey, Bill, what's up? I'm just at the fluff part, so little dig into the fluff on Essentials right now. But I started doing some backstory on retro clones and the OGL and where it all started. Early discussions grew on forums such as Dragon's Foot, I've been there, Knights and Knave, Alehouse, before spreading across hundreds of personal blogs. The blogosphere eventually became the intellectual center of the movement, with designers sharing essays and debating ideas almost daily. Topics included dungeon design, player skill, referee rulings, random tables, exploration, hex crawling, sandbox campaigns, meaningful risk, lethal combat, and open-ended problem solving. This growing exchange of ideas became known as Old School Renaissance. Later, many people began using Old School Revival, reflecting that the movement had grown beyond studying the past and was now creating entirely new games inspired by old school principles. Both terms remain common today. Renaissance is bringing back what was old. The idea of revival sort of came in when you start seeing the newer games start springing up. Not just, oh, there's old school essentials. Now there's a new game that is based on the old games, right? The OSR wave the OSR was never one game. One common misconception is that the OSR is a single game system. It isn't. It is a broad design movement built around shared principles rather than shared mechanics. Some designers emphasized rulings instead of rules, minimal mechanics, player creativity, procedural generation, random tables, dangerous exploration, sandbox campaigns. Others experimented with entirely new mechanics while still embracing those same philosophies. This is why two OSR games can look mechanically very different while still feeling unmistakably old school. Why BX became the foundation. Although many editions of D&D were recreated, one gradually became the preferred foundation for much of the OSR. Moldvay Cook, Basic and Expert D&D, 1981, commonly called BX. Players saw it as striking a balance between the sparse presentation of original D&D and the complexity of AD&D. It offered straightforward rules, fast character creation, dangerous combat, strong support for exploration, consistent mechanics, room for referee ruling. And that's, again, that exploration part I was talking here with math, fun, and games. It's definitely is one of the additions that leans into it, even though I think a good game master can lean into it no matter what, right? It was relatively concise and easier to reproduce than AD&D, making it an attractive foundation for both publishers and players over time. BX became the rule set most closely associated with the retro clone movement. Enter Gavin Norman. British designer Gavin Norman had already established a strong reputation within the OSR through his adventures, the Wormskin Zine, and the Dolmen Wood campaign setting. While using BX, he noticed a reoccurring problem. The original rules were spread across multiple books, organized inconsistently, and could be slow to reference during play. Rather than redesign the game, he set out to reorganize it. The BX Essentials. In 2017, Gavin Norman released BX Essentials. His goal was remarkably disciplined. He did not seek to modernize the mechanics or change how BX played. Instead, he restated every rule using clearer language while preserving the original mechanics, reorganizing the game so that information was easier to find during play. The books became known for consistent terminology, excellent indexing, extensive cross-reference, cleaner layout, concise wording, highly organized presentation. One of its defining design choices was presenting most rules on a single 2-page spread whenever possible, greatly reducing page flipping during play. Many players described it as the clearest presentation of BX ever published. You wonder why the Essentials is considered so light and just so it's sold so well, because in gameplay, being able to use this during gameplay, it's a masterpiece in that way. I give it that. From BX Essentials to old school Essentials, Following its success, the line expanded beyond simply reorganizing the original BX rules. The game was renamed Old School Essentials OSC and grew into a complete product line. New releases included Classic Fantasy, Advanced Fantasy, Adventures, Monster Books, Campaign Settings, Supplements. The Advanced Fantasy books adapted many character classes, races, monsters, spells, and concepts from AD&D into the simpler BX rule engine. The result gave players much of AD&D's variety while retaining the speed and elegance of BX. One of the flagship games of the OSR, Old School Essentials, became one of the defining games of the OSR, not because it reinvented classic D&D, but because it remained remarkably faithful to it. Its reputation rests on exceptional editing, professional layout, outstanding organization, consistent terminology, and ease of use during play. Even many owners of the original TSR books choose to run the game using OSE simply because it was faster to navigate at the table. The evolution of the OSR. After the years passed, the OSR evolved beyond retro clones. The earliest years focused on preserving older editions of D&D. Later, designers began asking different questions. What new games can we create using old school principles? This led to an explosion of original systems that embraced the philosophy of early role-playing without attempting to recreate a specific edition of D&D. Games such as Into the Odd, Knave, Cairn, and Black Hack, and even Morkborg all emerged from this later phase of the movement. By this point, the OSR had become more than a preservation project. It had become a thriving branch of the tabletop game design, producing entirely new systems, settings, adventures, and ideas while continuing to draw inspiration from the earliest decades of the hobby. So now you understand. If you didn't know much, I'm going to have one of these right now, but I want to clear the air. Like, a lot of people ask me, what is Old School Essentials? Right? Sam OG, someone who I interviewed recently and was commenting here earlier, he got into it, but he didn't even know what it was when he first went into it. But he started to realize, hey, it's really clean layout. It's really well to do it. This is a guy who's newer to the hobby than a lot of us. Came in later in life and found Old School Essentials later. But he's finding our old school D&D, but at a time when it's been cleaned up. And the introduction to it is amazing. And to me, Old School Essentials really proves that it can be a great path in for new people in the hobby to the old school. Like, it really does work. Like, it works the way a lot of old school guys always fantasize something working. They'll be like, well, this will get people into the old school. And I'm like, and then we'll see things that come and go and they fail. They don't actually work. There's a lot of pipe dreams people have in the old school that don't work out. But Old School Essentials is one of those rare things where the pipe dream is a reality. And when you introduce that to new people, oh my, when they finally open their eyes and their minds to what Old School Essentials is, which is just the old stuff, but really organized, just basically it's teaching you the magic we know of, but teaching it to you in a more clear way. If I say get into old BX, I would have to get all these different books, show you the thing, explain it to you, take your mind wrapping around stuff to try to pull everything together to get that clear to you. Old School Essentials, it just bam into your mind. And the beauty and magic of old school BX, whoo, baby. I mean, that stuff is amazing. We all know that. Bill's here. Bill's an old school. Bill's like me, old timer. He's gonna love that stuff. We have big fun here. We have math fun. Sorry, who's into it? I know Black Rose, the second edition guy, so he understood right away. I didn't even have to get it, but you should get Old School Essentials of Black Rose. That's another game. You should consider it. It is different than second edition. There is a different experience, and it might be interesting for you to learn that before you run Mystera, because it really does connect to Mystera really well, right? But yeah, Old School Essentials is a great way to introduce new people to old gaming. to old D&D. It just really is, because TSR was always trying to do this, and I think the publisher Gavin got this. Gary always understood. Like, here's where I think Gavin was genius, but it was the genius of Gary Gygax that really understood this. TSR constantly was in an experimental stage. So people have to remember that. Everything with TSR was an experiment. And that's why everything becomes messy. Everything becomes messy. You put it out, but then you come up with new ideas after it's out. So it's like, imagine like Steam games have a really great way of updating and stuff like that, right? Like early access games. Think about TSR like an early access game. It is D&D before it's D&D. So you have to think of like the early access concept of a Steam game, right? That's what TSR D&D is, like early access. That's a great way to look at it, right? And meaning they're constantly going to be doing updates, fixes, and all this. But how do you do updates after you've already put the game book together and people went and purchased it? Well, now you got to put stuff in Dragon Magazine. Now you got to bring out this extra material here. Now you got to stick stuff in the setting. Now you stick some stuff in a module, right? And that means all your ideas that make up the entirety of the game are scattered all over the place. And Gary always knew that what they made was amazing, but it's hard to deliver that if you don't bring it together. Yep. Oh, advances, really. The whole OSA thing is fucking beautiful. But you're completely right there, Bill. But Gary understood this concept of if we want people to understand the special thing we made here, we have to bring things together, because as much as we would like the audience to go to the scattered points outside of people we already have attracted, most new people will not walk in and understand. They won't look for the new piece over here. They won't look for this over here. They won't go all over the place. So if we want the magic of our beautiful system, because maybe the original was really grandiose, but it's really grandiose with all the extra things brought out when you put it into a package. You get to see the beauty of it. But if it's not put together, that beauty goes into the radar, right? That you get a very amateur thing without all the extra add-ons. So Gary always had the concept of always trying to repackage it. And they do an okay job, but sometimes it was really messy anyway, because it's also, even the repackaging is an experiment. Everything about TSR being a tabletop role-playing game company, they all don't know what they're doing on any level. None of this has been done really in the same way before. So it's all experimenting, all trying new stuff. Gavin, to me, with OSC, is the peak of Gary's efforts to bring things together. If Gary was alive, I really believe it. And I don't like to ever to say what people that passed on would have to say. I think it's hard to predict what people would say, and you shouldn't do it most of the time, but I'll make an exception here. If Gary Gygax was alive and seeing what Gavin did, he would say, thank you. That's what I was trying to do with TSR for all the years he was working there. That all the years he had TSR up and going. That organization of the way Gavin put things together with OSE is exactly what Gary wanted done with the games. And Gavin is a fucking genius. And people should thank him. Old school guys should thank him. Should thank him for what he's done, because he's taken magic that they knew was magic, and it wasn't well communicated to the newer generation, and he's made it where it communicates the fucking beauty of it and the magic of it to the new generation in a way that it draws the new people for real, not in a pipe dream way. Right? That's why you get guys like Sam LG, who are these sort of independent guys that were into storytelling games and all this. He got the old school Essentials and went, holy, what is this, my dude? I didn't realize this is D&D. And if I introduced Sam OG to the old scattered version of what that is, I might not deliver that message to him in the same way. But him being introduced to package and seeing everything together and seeing all the magic put together, he gets to see it exactly the way it should be presented to him. And when we introduce new people to that stuff in this beautiful way, I think it's not just a pipe dream, it works. And we all get reminded that what we loved is not a stupid thing. It should make old school guys feel good, because you assume you have something special, but we're all looking for evidence of that. Do new people actually see what we see? Is it as special as we think it is? Is it just nostalgia? It's nice to see OSE come along and go, no, it's not just nostalgia. Like, there really is something here. For real. For real. A beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Okay. Let's continue on. What it actually changed. One of the biggest misconceptions about old school Essentials is that it is just another BX clone. Mechanically, that is largely true, but that misses why it became one of the most respected games in the OSR. Its success wasn't built on changing the rules, it was built on changing how people use them. So it's how well it used at the table. Rather than redesigning basic expert D&D, Gavin Norman approached the game almost like an editor and a technical writer. His goal was to take a rule set many people already loved and present it in the clearest, fastest, and most consistent way possible. By the time Old School Essentials arrived, the OSR had already spent over a decade proving there was a strong interest in classic D&D. Earlier retro clones have recreated the rules. OSE aimed to become the definitive presentation of those rules. Information designed for the table. The original BX books remain rules in a teaching style. The original BX books explain rules in a teaching style. They gradually introduce concepts as though they are introducing someone to a role-playing game for the first time. That approach works well when learning the game, but it can be slower during play. Finding a specific rule often means searching through paragraphs or remembering which chapter introduced it. Old School Essentials reorganizes the book as reference manuals instead. Rules are broken into short, clearly labeled sections that can be located quickly at the table. Instead of relying on long explanations, OSE makes heavy use of concise rules statements, bullet points, tables, and clear headings. The focus is on finding information immediately rather than reading lengthy text. The goal wasn't simply to make the books easier to read, it was to make them faster to use during play. The two-page spread philosophy. One of the defining features of OSE is its page layout. Whenever practical, an entire rule topic is contained within a single two-page spread. Rather than turning several pages to understand a subsystem, nearly everything needed is visible at once. Combat procedures, dungeon exploration, wilderness travel, encounters, spellcasting, and many other topics can usually be referenced without constant page flipping. This design philosophy became one of OSE's definitive strengths, and many referees report they can run long sessions with very little searching because related information is presented together. From modular booklets to rule tomes, Old School Essentials was originally released as a series of smaller books, each covering a different part of the game. This modular approach allowed groups to buy only the sections they wanted. Later, those books were collected into a larger hardcover editions, including the Classic Fantasy Rule Tomes and Advanced Fantasy Rule Tomes, as mentioned by Bill. These all-in-one volumes made the game even easier to use and introduced many players to OSE, becoming the format most people now associate with the game. Advanced Fantasy. After establishing the Classic Fantasy line, Old School Essentials expanded with Advanced Fantasy. Rather than becoming a recreation of AD&D, these books adapt many AD&D inspired ideas into the BX engine while maintaining compatibility with its core mechanics. Players gain access to additional character classes, as already mentioned, Ancestry and class options inspired by AD&D alongside classic race and class play. More monsters, additional spells, expanded magic items, broader character options. The result gives groups much of AD&D's variety while retaining speed, simplicity, and structure of BX. Okay. One second. Get my notes ready. Okay. That's enough fluff on old school essentials. I think everybody here knows. Yeah, to run, Bill, you're right. I think everybody has heard so far what the essentials is. I mean, I'm not going to teach you BX here. That's not the point of the stream. I don't have to teach BX. I want people to understand what old school essentials is. I think I've accomplished that. So that part is done. So that's just an overview of what old school essentials is, what it became, how it was packaged together. I think we got that covered. 6 games that changed the OSR. Old School Essentials became the definitive presentation of classic BXD&D, but these 6 games helped prove that the OSR could become far more than a movement dedicated to preserving old rules. Each introduced new ideas that influenced designers and helped shape the modern old school landscape. Before we get into them, if you guys have any comments about Old School Essentials, or BX in general, I mean, I knew Bill would have a few of those statements there. You guys can ask questions, talk to me, whatever. Like, look, most of the overview of BX, if I'm not teaching BX, which I'm not doing with that, I can only give you a rundown of what it is. And I think over the notes I have and my personal speech I added to that whole thing, I can't really tell you more other than I think it's a beautiful thing. I can't sell it more than I tried to sell it to you. Right? Like there's no more details really to add. It is just BX well put together. It is well organized into a 2-page system, pitching how it's easy to use. All kids love fluff. Of course they do. Fluff's good. And I'm selling out. I want to sell OSC a bit, right? I really do. I know. Rum and Stippy inspired. I know. But I do want people to consider OSC. I think it's worth buying. And if you don't have BX or you're in the new school or you want to know what old school is, OSC. I'm a 2nd edition guy. I would still say OSC is a great introduction to TSR Dungeons and Dragons. And it is the game. It's the game out of early access. That's what I would call OSC. OSC is BX if it finally got out of the early access state of a Steam game. If anybody here knows what Steam game early access means, they'll understand what I mean. Like I had the game Rust, and that was considered early access for years because they keep working on it, right? But at one point, the designer, the people making it say, we've established what Rust is. We're finally going to say Rust is now no longer early access. What Rust is what Rust is, right? I would say OSE is BX out of the experimental stage. It is out of early access. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I like how they take AD&D stuff, Bill. That's some of the cooler stuff, and they don't forget it. But they don't just make another OSC AD&D game. They actually instead make sure everything works together. I like that. I like the compatibility. I think you'd appreciate that too, Bill. Is they take some of the cooler AD&D stuff and actually just instead of trying to make OSC and then AD&D sort of version of it, they actually take the stuff so it's compatible together. Which is obviously you can already do that, but it's doing it for you. It's just saving you that step, right? It's already bringing the AD&D stuff in, so it just works right away with BX. Grab on Otane. Another thing, Black Rose, is it's way cheaper than trying to collect all the fantastic books of the past that are based on this stuff. And it's the stuff that you'll get with the OSE is good to go with your second edition gaming. It has a lot of collection of ideas that you would consider spread out and stuff I guarantee will inspire you even with your second edition stuff. But it's actually interesting enough, I think even you would try to run it. And wouldn't it be interesting to be able to say to your group, how about we try OSE with Mystera? I think your group would say yes right away. And it'd be a bit of a different experience. And it's a little easier. It's a little bit more different. It really is. I've done OD&D. I've done Beckmead BX. I've done AD&D 1E. I've done second edition. As much as they're similar, they are different. There is a difference. There really is. And anyone, I think Bill's played a few editions, would agree with me. There is a difference from one edition to another. It all sort of has the old school D&D feel. There is a similar feel. There is something you'll relate from one to another. But is it different in its own right? Yes. Yeah. And here's what's so good about it, dude. Even it will advance every game that you're running, including your Warhammer stuff. It was just like our first edition game. Yep. It's just such it's the use of it, Bill. You would Bill understand, like, if you game, like, Bill games a lot, I game a lot. I know Black Rose, you game a lot. When you really game, and you don't just spend a lot of time on YouTube talking about it, but you game a lot like we game, like I do my sessions every month. If you game a lot like I have all my life, that's why a small thing like the ease of use is a big issue to a guy like people like me and Bill. Because ease of use is a different experience. Like, here's one thing about tabletop role-playing games I'll tell you all, which I really know is true. There's a line. And small things can alter your entire experience. Like, they can be so sensitive. Take a little bit long to get something, your experience is over here. Easier to get something, your whole experience of that session changes. Like, I mean, in a big way. It can take years of, like, wisdom to pick this stuff up. I mentioned it the other night, but it's so true. There is a line of how things play out. So when you get books that are easy to use, if you do have to look something up, the quickness and speed of doing so, if that comes down to it, it really changes how you experience a session. Like, it's a massive thing. It seems like a small thing, but it's not. That's why Bill went out of his way to mention the ease of use. He's going to make an issue of that, because if you game a lot, you have the wisdom to appreciate that. Right? You have the wisdom to understand how important that is. Right? How important that is to your experience. Deeply important. Anyway. Okay. Dungeon Crawl Classics 2012. Designer Joseph Goodman. Dungeon Crawl Classics asked a different question than most early OSR games. Instead of recreating an older edition of D&D, it tried to capture the wild, unpredictable spirit of pulp fantasy stories that inspired the earliest role-playing games, particularly Appendix Ed authors that Gary Gygax frequently referenced. It depends on who's running it. I think I just got unlucky with the guy who was running it for me personally. What it brought to the OSR introduced famous Level 0 funnel, where each player begins with several ordinary villagers and only the survivors become adventurers. Made magic unpredictable through large spell result tables, ensuring the same spell rarely plays out exactly the same way twice. Introduced mighty deeds of arms, allowing warriors to perform creative combat stunts without relying on feat trees or complex combat systems. I like some of the ideas, but again, it's like many games. Ideas are okay if you got the right guy running. I think I got unlucky, right? So my experience with it was sadly a little bit low. Made luck a core mechanic that players could spend to influence outcomes, something like hero points or something in that way, like to change outcomes. Encourages judges to make rulings rather than depend on exhaustive rules, continued old school traditions of extensive random tables and unexpected outcomes. Why it matters. Dungeon Crawl Classics proved that original fantasy RPG could embrace old school principles without being a retro clone. It became one of the largest, most successful games in the movement and showed that OSR could confidently create new games rather than simply recreate old ones. So basically, it's saying, as much as you see WotC, the old school gaming still can inspire new games right now. So the idea is it's worth keeping the old school in mind in activity and being active in the hobby because it's still producing, where in a way the WotC stuff isn't producing in the same way. Just saying. Into the Odd 2014, designer Chris McDowell. Into the Odd became famous for asking just how much of an RPG could be removed while still feeling like a classic adventure gaming. The answer turned out to be quite a lot. Again, this is also proving to you that is when Gary says master a game through raw, but then make all the changes you want, it won't blow up games. These games come from guys that played D&D, I guarantee it, and made changes after mastering the rules. In some cases. All right, what it brought to the OSR. Eliminated attack rules. Attacks automatically hit with only damage being rolled. Introduced hit protection. So there was some odd talk about some newer games being these automatic attacks and you only roll damage as if that was a new concept. I'm like, it's already been done. So it introduced hit protection, separating fatigue and near misses from actual physical injury. Reduced character creation to only a few minutes. Focused almost entirely on exploration, player decisions, and problem solving. It inspired an entire family of games now commonly called Odd Likes. Became one of the games most associated, or became one of the games most associated with the development of New School Revolution, NSR, a design movement that grew out of the OSR ideas. Why it matters. Into the Odd demonstrated that old school gaming wasn't defined by D&D mechanics. It proved that radically simplified rules could still deliver the same style of player-driven adventure. The Black Hack in 2016. Designer David Black. The Black Hack asked a simple question: how much of classic D&D can be streamlined without losing its old school feel? Rather than recreating an earlier edition, it rebuilt familiar mechanics into something faster while preserving the core philosophy of exploration, danger, and player ingenuity. Example of the changes you can make without destroying something. Just to say, if you think you're going to destroy D&D through these changes, you're not, right? What it brought to the OSR: popularized player-facing roles, where players make nearly all dice rolls, including defending against enemy attacks. Introduced usage dice, replacing detailed resource tracking with an elegant system for ammunition, torches, food, and supplies. This would be something Miles might be interested in, and he might be able to pitch to his guys, because we had talked about resources, and turning it into a mechanic might be something the guys he plays with might find appealing. I don't know. So again, it introduced usage dice, replacing detailed resource tracking with an elegant system for ammunition, torches, food, and supplies. Simplified many traditional mechanics without sacrificing old school gameplay. Encouraged extremely fast character creation and quick play. Inspired hundreds of hacks, variants, and independent games built upon its streamlined mechanics. Why it matters. The Black Hack demonstrated that classic fantasy RPGs can modernize their mechanics without abandoning old school principles. Many later minimalist games borrowed directly from its ideas, making it one of the most influential mechanical innovations within the OSR. Knave, or Knave. 2018 designer Ben Milton. Knave was built around flexibility and capability. Rather than asking players to learn another version of classic D&D, it sought to create one lightweight system capable of running decades of old school adventures. What it brought to the OSR: removed traditional character classes, made equipment largely determine what a character can do, combined inventory management and weight into an elegant system, made characters easy to move between different OSR adventures and settings, created one of the simplest fantasy RPGs while remaining broadly compatible with classic adventures. Why it matters. Nave proved that capability didn't require recreating old rulebooks. Its minimalist approach inspired countless independent designers and became one of the most influential fantasy RPGs of modern OSR. Number 5, Mork Borg. Designer Penn Nilsson and Johan Nohr. Mork Borg challenged another assumption. It argued that an RPG rulebook could be as much of an artistic statement as it was a game manual. What it brought to the OSR: introduced a bold, heavy metal visual identity unlike anything previously seen in the movement, combined minimalist mechanics with an apocalyptic dark fantasy setting, demonstrated that graphic design could become part of the play experience itself, spawned dozens of officially licensed and independent Borg-inspired games, showed that premium graphic design and Kickstarter publishing could become successful business models for independent RPG creators. Why it matters. Mork Borg expanded what people thought an OSR game could look like. It influenced not only game mechanics, but also publishing presentation and visual design across independent RPG industry. Okay, Karen, or however you want to pronounce it. Yocha Gao. Karen combines designer Yocha Gao. I'll say the name. Sorry if I'm hacking the name up. I'm sorry. Designer Yochai Gao Gal. Karen combines many of the ideas introduced by Into the Odd and Knave into an elegant, highly accessible fantasy RPG. Its goal is simplicity without sacrificing meaningful player decision. What it brought to the OSR: classless character creation, inventory-driven gameplay, extremely fast combat, minimal rules overhead, freely available under an open license, encouraging widespread adaptation and modification, successfully blended into the design philosophies of Into the Odd and Knave into one cohesive system. Why it matters. Karen became one of the easiest entry points into modern old school gaming. Its accessibility, open licensing, and adaptability have made it one of the fastest growing systems in the OSR and favorite foundations for new designers. What these 6 games did for the OSR. Together, these 6 games represent 6 major milestones in the evolution of the OSR. Dungeon Crawl Classics proved that original fantasy RPGs could embrace old school principles without being retro clones. Into the Odd demonstrated that old school play was driven more by exploration and player ingenuity than traditional D&D mechanics. The Black Hack showed that classic fantasy rules could be dramatically streamlined while remaining unmistakably old school. Knave proved that broad compatibility and elegant simplicity could coexist in a modern fantasy RPG. Mork Borg redefined the visual identity of the movement, showing that presentation and atmosphere could become just as influential as mechanics. Karen refined many of the ideas introduced by earlier minimalist games into one of the most approachable and adaptable systems in the hobby. Together, these games tell the story of OSR's evolution. It began as a movement dedicated to preserving role-playing games of the 1970s and 80s, but these designers demonstrated that old school philosophy could inspire entirely new mechanics, new aesthetics, and new ways of experiencing tabletop role-playing games. They represent 6 of the clearest milestones in the OSR's transformation from retro clone movement into one of the most creative branches of modern tabletop game design. Okay. Not completely done. Worth mentioning, the OSR never had a leader. Unlike many movements in tabletop gaming, the OSR was never led by a single company, designer, or organization. There was no official beginning, no governing body, no definitive rule book explaining what the movement was supposed to be. Although it had no leaders, several individuals became especially influential through their games, writings, and publishing. Designers such as Matt Finch, Stuart Marshall, Daniel Proctor, Gavin Norman, Ben Milton, and Chris McDowell all have shaped the movement in different ways, but none of them spoke for the OSR as a whole. That is one reason there is still no universally accepted definitive definition of what qualifies as an OSR game. It is more of a philosophy than a rule system. Although many OSR games resemble early editions of D&D, the movement is held together far more by shared design principles than shared mechanics. Common themes include player skill over character skill, dangerous exploration, meaningful resource management, referee rulings over exhaustive rules, and open-ended problem solving. Even emergent stories created through players rather than pre-written plots. So story emerging, not storytelling. That's what the OSR pitches. Not storytelling, stories emerging from playing a game. Blogs were as important as rulebooks. Much of the movement's growth happened outside of published games. Thousands of blogs post explore topics such as dungeon design, encounter building, campaign structure, referee techniques, random tables, and game philosophy. Influential blogs such as Grognardia, Jeff's game blog, and Hack and Slash became required reading for many referees and designers. Many of the ideas now associated with the OSR first appeared in blog discussions long before they appeared in published books. The DIY spirit, one of the defining characteristics of the OSR is its the do-yourself culture. The movement actively encourages referees to write their own adventures, sandbox, create monsters, invent host rules, build campaign settings, modify published games, and share their work with others. I gotta say, that principle side of the OSR sometimes gets lost when you're hearing old school D&D guys constantly talk about modules. But I know that has been a standard push to make your own, do your own. To me, that's where I come in. That's the philosophy I have with the sandbox gaming stuff I talk about. I always hope that OSR guys recognize that that's what I'm pitching and never get offended by what I'm doing. But some guys, supposed OSR guys, will bitch at me about my sandbox push, right? Even though I was like, well, wait, my push for pure sandbox, not modules, should be something a lot of OSR guys are on board with, not opposed to. So I'll finally say this. The OSR influenced RPG design far beyond its own community. Perhaps the movement's greatest achievement is that many of its ideas spread well beyond OSR itself. Cleaner rule presentation, better organized books, sandbox campaign tools, random tables, exploration-focused adventures, referee-friendly design. These ideas have influenced publishers across tabletop role-playing games, including the games produced well outside of the OSR. What began as an effort to preserve old school gaming ultimately helped shape the direction of modern RPG design. Basically, old school is still doing what it's always done. And as long as it's not forgotten, as long as it's not left in the background somewhere, it will continue to produce new games, new ideas, and keep the hobby moving forward. And it's done for the hobby what WotC, Dungeons, and Dragons could never do. I hate to say it, but that's the impact of old. That's how powerful old school D&D was, and old school gaming, not just D&D, but old school gaming philosophy and principles in general has done more for the hobby in 2026 than every edition WotC has ever produced called Dungeons and Dragons from their company. That's how powerful the old school is. There. Hope you guys like that coverage. The about an hour long, slightly around an hour long, old school essentials, and my sort of general take on the OSR. I hope that was somewhat satisfying. Tomorrow, I'm covering Marvel Superheroes, the tabletop role-playing game. So it's finally back to something that's not D&D. And then I won't be streaming Sunday or Monday. And I got to take those days off because I got a busy week next week for streaming, because I'll tell you guys what the next week's streams are, because it's 2 weeks of old school D&D. So next week, this Saturday, I cover the Marvel Superheroes TTRPG. Next week, I will be doing, of course, my off script is every Tuesday, but I'll be covering for old school Lakmar, not the DCC version, but the AD&D 1E version. That will be on the 12th. And then on the 13th, I'll be covering, it'll be part 2 of my coverage of OD&D and Beckme, a second look. And then on the 14th, I'll be covering DDs and demigods. And next Saturday, I'll be covering a great tabletop role-playing game, The Morrow Project. Now, just to keep going with the thing, every Tuesday is my off script, so you guys know this. My first members-only stream of August will be on the 19th, and that will be Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Black Rose is definitely looking forward to that. On the 20th, we'll be going back to old school D&D, and I'll be doing one-to-one time and shared worlds, the tournament style from AD&D 1E, one-to-one time and shared worlds. We're going to focus on that. And then on the 21st, I'm going to be covering 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. There you go. D&D 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. And then on the 22nd, I'll be covering the game, the tabletop role-playing game, Immortal, the Invisible War. Now, my second members-only stream of August, the second, and I only do 2 this month, is going to be on the 26th, and that's going to be Most Guard role-playing game. Then on the 27th, old school D&D, I'll be covering some modules, the Conan and Rid Sonja modules produced by TSR. Good stuff. On the 28th, we'll be going to Dungeons and Dragons Basic Fantasy RPG. And then the final stream of August will be on the 29th, and I'll be covering the tabletop role-playing game Over the Edge. Thank you, Black Rose. Oh, James, I don't want to mention anything. I'm trying to get in touch with him. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever see him on here, but I have interacted with James. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Yeah, I know some guys that love it. The guy who introduced me that even existed, my first when I heard about it, DK, was a guy that I know you'll know, Samwise7 Tim. Years and years and years and years ago, started talking about this game called Lamentations of the Flame Princess. What the hell is this? I got to check it out. And yes, woohoo on the whole thing. It's going to be a good August. And next month, I know Philo and Zeg might not be here right now, but they're both cyberpunk guys. I'm going to be covering some stuff surrounding it, but Cyberpunk 2020. So part 2 to Cyberpunk. I know those guys are excited about that because I love Cyberpunk. And this is why Black Rose, this is why I told you I purposely leave stuff out just so I have a reason to come back and do extended streams on this stuff. Now some of that will slowly start to play itself out and people will appreciate it. It's like if I did everything Cyberpunk in one stream, why continue, right? World of Darkness was a bit of that, but there's still some World of Darkness stuff I can come back on. I'm looking forward to the Over the Edge stream. It's my all-time, oh my DK. I'll hit it out of the park for you, baby. I'll hit it out of the park for you. You'll be a happy camper. I know the game well. Oh, I know he is. I know James is. Yep. Oh, DK, I hope I asked him. I haven't got a direct answer from him yet about an interview. I can't promise anything. I'll leave it at that. I have talked to the guy. I'm not going to promise he'll say yes. It'd be nice if he would. But who knows? It's up to him. It's up to him. But we'd love to talk to him about that game. We'd love to have him on here because I know you would appreciate that. But it's up to him. Up to him. But Over the Edge, oh, DK, you'll be happy with me, my friend. And you show up to that one because you're somewhat like, I always love it when guys that know the games I'm covering like that show up, because I always like to, there's a qualifier. Like, I know I'm going to do good coverage on it, but I love it when I get guys that know the game well that shows up and I know I'm not getting a complaint from them. Right? It's like a Philo and Zeg, no Cyberpunk. So when I first did my coverage on that, I love having those guys there to go, yeah, good job. And it's not like I need the pat on the back, but it's like, I know nerds are picky. My fellow nerds are very picky people, right? Including yourself. We just are. It's part of being nerds. I am too. So let's just appreciate that that's part of who we are. So when I please nerds on the games they like, it gives me a sense of satisfaction. Oh, yeah, I still talk to Tim all the time on X. Me and Tim are friends. Yep, I love Tim. I love Samwise 7 Tim. One of the classiest, nicest guys in the entire hobby. What a class act, DK. What a class act. He's the first guy who's ever won a debate with me on YouTube. It's in the comment section. It was early, over a decade ago. I'm having a disagreement with him about something. And man, you know how nice Tim is. Tim is never going to be crude in his response, but when the guy's right, he's right. And it was such a classy way that he put me in my place. I was so impressed and embarrassed. Like, I was harsh. He comes back like the class act that we both know Tim is. What a fucking brilliant man, right? Class act Tim, because he always is that way. Comes back and just, it makes me feel ashamed. Like, I was embarrassed. I apologized to him. Oh, sorry, dude. Like, you're completely right. He won the argument. And ever since that day, he's had my utmost respect. And the guy has been nothing but a class act. Every day he backs that up. He doesn't seem to break away from that, in my experience. Now, maybe other people know something about him I've never heard, but personally, in my interactions with him, the guy from day one till now has been, it's just who he is. It's not an act. I say class act, but it's not an act, just who he is. And the guy's fucking brilliant. Very smart, fucking intelligent guy. And I still save some of his old content on YouTube. It's still some of the fucking best content for tabletop role-playing game stuff. If you want to know about some old games, his reviews on games were brilliant. Absolutely. His stuff on the fire and ice stuff that had related to the show, Game of Thrones. If you want to know about that old game that inspired that show, you should go see his review on that stuff. His reviews were magic, dude. The guy was he was very thorough and very new at stuff, and really a reader who understood what he was reading. Really wise, intelligent guy. Way ahead of his time, too. Was doing that stuff before other people were doing that stuff that way. So I got nothing, as obviously you could tell DK, I got nothing but fucking brilliant stuff to say about Samwise Tim. Right? Samwise 7 Tim is a beautiful guy. And the hobby would be better off to have a lot more guys like him in it. 100%. 100% better off with guys like him, more guys like him in it. That's what I think. There. I'm not blowing smoke up his ass, because I mean every word of it. I'm not talking shit. I just boom. Oh yeah, really well informed, man. When he knows something, he's the guy to talk to. And he's the guy he's not going to be an ass to you. He's a great guy to go to on anything. Like, I'm guaranteeing, if you don't know him that well, I'm giving the thumbs up. Anytime you have any question, go talk to Tim, man. He's known the game for years. He loves the game. That's why he's there. Now, when I say years, like he's known about the game since day one. He got hooked on it and he ran a bunch of it. So I guarantee you he knows his stuff on that game. And yeah, he's fucking great. I still interact with him because it's like, it's just I knew him before he had his kid. I know him since he had his kid's now growing up, and his kid's become a great DM, and the guy's living the magic, dude. Like his now his boy is growing up and doing great DMing, and just what a magic life. Really, really like passionate for about gaming, right? And that's where me and him connect. Because no matter how rough I am, guys like him get it, right? That they can overlook things and just see that you're real. It's like, oh, you're a little rough, Steven, but he knows. He knows I give a shit. He knows I have a passion for gaming, and that's me and him share that part. Right? He's a nicer guy than I am, but we share a passion, right? And that's where me and him. I would say he would agree with that. Me and him connect on the passion for gaming that we have, right? Not the same attitudes, just the passion, right? Two different people that way, but that's appropriate. But yes, I'm glad. I hope I knocked that out of the park. I know Black Rose will probably want to look a little bit more into old school essentials. I know I already going to look into Mysteria, but that's all connected. And old school essentials does have a great package of stuff, and it really does take a lot of the D&D stuff, AD&D before it and around it and all that stuff, and it combines it into a package of a beautiful thing. And I would say, second edition, I still would prefer most people look at that because I think it has I think the gaming is better at the end of the day. Just being real with people, it's a personal opinion. As a game master, a personal taste, I would play that. Just got bigger. Oh, your wife's gonna kill me. You can tell her I apologize for getting you all over the place on gaming, but as long as you work it into your schedule, I mean that's the best way to put it. It's like if suddenly you're like, "Can I have an extra day of game?" She's like, "Steven!" I'm gonna choke me to death. I don't want to add an extra day. So when you're done one campaign, move on to the next. That's how you're gonna have to do it. Okay, Bill. I love you, dude. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon. Remember, Marvel Superheroes tomorrow night if you got some time. Talk to you then. But yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's 2.5 hours pretty much on the dot. I'm pretty sure you're secure. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I get a feeling. I can't say I know that much, Black Rose, about that situation, but I get a feeling you're okay. I get a feeling you manage your kids in life and your gaming. So I mean, we've had plenty of talks where I think that's true. So that's my instinctive reaction to you. I think you manage your games into your life pretty well, and that's pretty good because it's not like you're playing video games doing all these other activities. A lot of your time is your family, and I think that's a good thing about you. It's one thing I respect about you, Mr. Black Rose, right? You're a family man, family man. I appreciate that. I respect it about you big time. You're a father, which is good. You can't have the gaming overtake it, but you still, if you have a passion for gaming, you got to have that night, right? At least I think what I help you out do is you game on your one day a week, but at least with your kids around, you can still come listen to me talk about some games with you, baby. Right? So I hope I fill some of that need. I think that's why you're here a lot. I know you are. I know you are. Okay. I'm going to call it there, guys. 2.5 hours on the dot, and I've done 3 nights in a row, and it's hot. And I'm quite happy with the outcome of that. Oh, I know. Springs. Okay. I love you, Black Rose. Everyone else, I'll let you say goodnight, Black Rose. But then I'm going. I'm going. I'm going. That's it. That's it for tonight. Tomorrow I'll get on. I'll be a bit more talkative because it'll be more cool. As it always is on my end as well.